That night, I had a dream. It wasn't in tune with any dream I'd ever had before. There were no weird monsters or strange plot lines of which I delivered a potato to a chicken. This dream wasn't my fucked up subconscious on drugs. Even at the time, I knew it was something different. Something that wasn't in tune with what I was at the time. It was vivid, realistic, and most of all, disturbing. I still remember it like it was yesterday. That was how much of an impact it had on me, as if it had been cemented in my mind. I was standing in this dark room. It seemed old and Victorian with these dark blood-red walls and a worn brown wood floor. There were no lights in the room besides a single candle which flickered with a small orange flame, causing the old-fashioned furniture in the room to throw menacing shadows. It added a horrific aura to the whole room. I looked around, glancing at each piece of furniture. A dark purple and gold sofa, a wooden coffee table, and a full bookshelf, all in the style of the room. I could feel this dampness on my wrist that was slowly migrating onto my palm, and then my fingers. I didn't look to see what it was, for some reason. Instead, I turned around. At first, I thought I had done it to leave the room, but the more I thought about the dream, the more I realized that I had, at the time, felt a presence behind me, and my dream self had been reacting to it, turning to see what was behind her. What I saw, was Hunter. She was standing there in a black satin dress with her gold hair billowing in thick silk. Her skin was the color of snow, as if all the blood had been drained from her body, leaving it unable to flush into any sort of normal shade. She looked different, unlike the Hunter I knew and more like the one I was beginning to think Shane and Dorian had known. She looked up at me with this primal expression, one that I had never seen on the face of a human before. Her irises were dark ruby, glittering in the candlelight, looking hungry. Her eyes locked with mine, and a wicked smile flickered on her dark red lips. "Ophelia," she murmured in a deep and malicious-sounding voice. She never called me Ophelia. She had been the one who started calling me Ozzy, and that was who I was to her, not Ophelia. I was utterly confused, but even though I know I should have been, I wasn't scared of her. She was my sister, and she wouldn't hurt me. Or was she? "Hunter?" I whispered, taking a cautious step towards her. Her sadistic smile just grew. I reached out to touch her arm. "Hunter." As my fingers brushed her skin, Hunter snatched my forearm and squeezed it hard. I gasped, trying to pull away. She was so strong. I couldn't even budge. "What are you doing?" I cried out. She didn't answer. "Hunter! Let me go! Hunter!" Then she fell. She just dropped, as if the floor had opened up and swallowed her. However, when I dropped to my knees, there was no opening, no trap door, nothing. "Hunter!" I cried out, feeling the floor. "Hunter, come back, Hunter." I didn't care of what kind of monster she had appeared to be. She was my sister, and I didn't want to lose her. "Hunter." "I'm right here." The hiss came from behind me, right into my ear. It was Hunter, but it didn't sound like her. The tone was different and more menacing, just like her smile had been. Then there was this sharp, agonizing pain piercing my shoulder. I screamed out and shot up in bed. I stared across my room at my window, breathing heavily. My body wasn't reacting normally. I just sat there, staring at the thing that was out of place in my room. It was the shadow of a man, standing in front of my window, haloed by the moonlight. It was like a scene from a movie. However, I didn't panic or scream that some dude had managed to break into my house and stand creepily at the end of my bed. I just stared at him. I just had a feeling that was what I was meant to do. My eyes stayed locked on his back as he gazed out my window into our backyard. "You don't need to be afraid," he whispered. And of course I recognized his voice. Why would I be thinking of anyone else? "Dorian?" I asked, confused. He turned towards me, but only partially. I could see his left eye gleam in the silver rays that poured through the glass. It made the sea seem white. He half smiled. "I won't let anyone hurt you." I just blinked at him. I don't know why I didn't speak, but I didn't need to. I felt relaxed, serene. Something within me trusted him. "Now, you need to wake up." My eyes flickered open, finally in the real world. I glanced around, making sure there were no strange men in my room. There wasn't, of course. However, I'm not sure if that assured me or disappointed me. Since he'd vanished from the funeral home earlier that day, I hadn't been able to get my mind off of him. I hated that, but there wasn't anything I could really do about it. I wasn't a slave to men, to their beauty or their charm. I'd only had one real boyfriend, and he was literally the biggest asshole on the face of the earth. It wasn't like I hated men. I hated relationships and the thought of wanting to be in one. But something about that man had just caught under my skin. I growled in frustration. At the time, I didn't really think of anything deeper about the dream. I didn't want to. My sister was a monster, and I was way too attracted to her best friend, who I hardly knew. Something about it had just shaken me. I needed to get my mind off of it. Off of what had happened that day. Off everything. So I grabbed my phone. "You still awake?" I texted to the contact, Ryan. It was 3 a.m., but I was wide awake and wound up. I needed to ease, and he was always the person I went to. It took him a few minutes, but finally he responded. Now. What do you need?" he wrote. "To relax. Be here in 10? "Yep." That was our thing. Ryan and I, if I needed to get the edge off, I would text him and he'd be here. He was reliable, at least, only since he didn't really have much of a life, a lot like me. I slid out of bed, slipped into my sweatpants. I shrank my oversized t-shirt and yawned, turning my music off. It was the middle of the night, but I have gotten enough of sleep to drive me. The day had been overly long and complicated, and I had crashed hard at around 8. I didn't want to sleep anymore, at risk of dreaming again. After the service, my mom had scolded me with heated red passion. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone," she howled. "No one heard me," I had grumbled. "That's not the point, Ophelia. You shouldn't talk to your mother that way." Jack had stepped in. He had crossed his arms and stared down at me in disappointment. I didn't need his approval, though. I didn't care what anyone thought of me. "Maybe my mother shouldn't talk about my sister like she meant nothing," I'd argued, my voice becoming a growl. "You know I loved your sister," Mom had snapped. "You understand nothing of my heartbreak." "Do you really? Because from what I see here, you don't give a single fuck that Hunter is gone." "Ooh, you cursed," Max echoed in the background. That wasn't an argument that he needed to hear, but they didn't care. "You unthankful little bitch," Mom had hissed low, so Max didn't hear the curse. "Go to your room," Jack had yelled. "Screw you both," I snapped, storming up the stairs to my room. "And while you're up there, you need to work on finding somewhere else to stay. I'm sick of your worthless ass moping around here without a job." I just ignored that. It was something Jack said to me every day, and yet I was still there. He never enforced it. If they did, who would they yell at and treat like utter shit? Each other, no doubt. I was their whipping girl. The thing that kept their marriage together. God knows they weren't living it up in the bedroom. They barely spoke. The life and the romance had died years ago. Most certainly because they were both raging assholes who gave zero shits about anything but their appearances to the rest of the town. Oh, the Grants broke up? The horror. They were such a great couple with their magnificent little genius of a son. Maybe Jack was working too much at the hospital. Perhaps Rebecca's grieving was too much. Or maybe it was that troubled daughter of theirs. Yeah, it was probably her. A shame. Fuck them. Fuck this town. Fuck this family. Fuck everything. I didn't belong here. Especially not without Hunter. A knock at my window jerked my attention away from my sorrow. I sniffled, wiping at the wetness on my cheeks. Ryan didn't need to see me crying. I shoved my weight off my bed and opened the way for my friend. "We should stay out here. Smoke and all," he said in his quiet voice. "You got it?" "Of course." He waved me onto the roof before plopping down where he stood. I climbed from my room and squatted down beside him. He stretched and yawned slightly before smiling a small smile at me. Ryan looked like a 16-year-old emo kid, even though he had graduated the same year as Hunter. He had pink zits dotting his jaw and forehead. However, his black-dyed hair covered most of the top part of the blemishes. It was long in the front, with sideways, swooping bangs, and short in the back at 3 centimeters in length. He was always wearing his tight black skinny jeans and hoodie with lime green skulls. His lip and eyebrow was pierced. Ryan may have appeared a little rough and plain, but he was kind of cute in his own little special way. Though, in truth, I wasn't really attracted to him. We just had a mutual use for each other, and nothing more. Ryan plucked a roll of dark paper from his pocket. He held it between his lips and lit it up with a lighter before taking a drag. He breathed out before handing me the joint. I mimicked his actions. Yes, I smoked marijuana. Sometimes, but only with him. The thing with me and Ryan was whenever one of us was feeling really down, wound up, or just in need of a serious break, we'd meet up and get high. We didn't talk much outside of it, but it was crucial to our survival. To have a release. I don't know where Ryan got it. I didn't trust myself with the information. He had more self-control than I had at the time, and he never overdone it like I knew I would have. I didn't want to be a stoner. "I found us some chips," I whispered, creeping into my room and flopping on the bed beside Ryan. We had smoked the whole joint, and had that odd hunger that it caused. He was flipping through channels. "I fucking hate TV," he mumbled, grabbing a chip from the bag. He bit down on the crunch and sighed, rolling over. "Netflix is where it's at," I teased with a slight laugh. Ryan just shook his head. I sighed. "You coming tomorrow?" I asked quietly. "Yeah, but only because I know it sucks for you. I hate funerals." "Me too." I laid beside him, eating our snack. "Got some black for me to borrow?" It was a joke, but his voice was so monotone sometimes it was hard to tell. Especially after we were done smoking. He was so relaxed that he didn't seem to have any sort of emotion for a while. Still, I laughed. "No, I think you have your own. Probably shouldn't wear that jacket, though." "Yeah, I'll take care of it." He sighed, clearly bored with the conversation and TV. He looked down at the bag with distaste before looking at me. I knew what he wanted. "Sex?" he asked. He nodded, his brown eyes flickering down at my body. "Yeah." My mind wandered back to Dorian. I bit my lip. "Okay," I uttered in a semi-raspy voice. Ryan slipped his hand up my shirt and squeezed my breast. He leaned over and kissed my neck before rolling on top of me. I unbuttoned his pants and he slid mine down. That was another thing of ours. Casual sex. It was just a way for us to channel our desires into something. For most of our friendship, neither of us had been in any sort of relationship. But that doesn't mean we didn't want that sort of pleasure. So whether it was out of boredom or desire, we would sleep together. We were sort of like a blank entity, a shell of null that the other filled with whatever value we wanted. And that night I was turning Ryan into Dorian. For the next 20 minutes, he grinded against me while breathing roughly in my ear. I kept my head turned to the side with my eyes squeezed shut and my mind focusing on the person I would rather have with me right now. I tried to interact with my doll. I would reach up and touch his back or squeeze his hand occasionally, but that just broke the submersion of my daydream. So instead, I just laid there like a dead fish, imagining how I would rather it go in my mind. I wanted passion and connection. Ryan and I didn't have it. I had never had that with anyone before. But it was what I truly wanted. I was a damaged romantic. Once Ryan finished, he rolled away and got dressed. He didn't say anything to me while he did so. I didn't say anything to him either. That was until he moved to the window to leave. "I'll see you, Ozzy," he murmured, opening the window. "Text me if you need me," I told him quietly. "Bye." "Bye." I closed the window behind him and pulled my black blinds closed. It was about 4 a.m. by then. The funeral was at 2 p.m., but my mother was going to leave earlier to make sure everything was perfect. Not only with the funeral, but with the banquet we were going to have afterwards, too. People were going to be in and out of our house from about 6 until sometime after we were to leave for the service. Mom had to make sure they were on the right track with everything, of course. She always took it upon herself to assure everything was the way she envisioned it. "If you want something done correctly, you have to do it yourself," she'd always say. The truth was, she was actually a control freak, and an annoying one at that. I didn't want to sleep. The risk of falling back into that strangely vivid dream was still too high. So instead, I decided to take a shower to get the smell of Ryan and weed off of me. I had my own bathroom connected to my room, so I didn't have to worry about waking any of my family up. I left my door open and blasted some music. I was afraid that once I got in that relaxing environment, I would think too much. And at that point, I didn't want that. The music and my lasting high distracted me enough, but I still caught my mind occasionally drifting back to the dream. I didn't want to remember the look on my sister's face, or the pain in my back. I rubbed my shoulder at the thought. I could swear that I felt 2 bumps about the center of my shoulder blade, but I shook it off. I was being silly, I told myself. And I was. There was no way that I could have imagined the truth behind it. I managed to fall into a dreamless sleep after that. It was something I definitely needed, though it only lasted a few hours. I really needed my rest, because the next day and every day after was a test of my strength.